Welcome! I am Lou, your host of All Things Odd and Strange, where we explore the odd in a slightly strange way. Today we're going to be looking at the scientifically astounding Shroud of Turin. So let's get into it. The Shroud of Turin is the purported burial cloth of Jesus. The burial cloth itself is about 11 feet long, where, according to Jewish burial customs, the body is laid at one end and the cloth is then brought over the top of the head, then covering the front of the body, kind of like a big U. Okay, so where did this shroud story begin? The first documented historical mention of the shroud was from 1354 to 1355. Geoffrey de Charnay had it housed in a church in Lorraine, France. Who he obtained the shroud from is unclear. Some speculate he obtained it from the Knights Templar, but that's not certain. When Geoffrey de Charnay passed, the shroud was given to his granddaughter Margaret. In turn, Margaret removed it from the church and hid it to protect it during the 100 Years' War. And later she sought out a permanent place for its safekeeping. Margaret was not married, was in a state of financial insecurity, and had no heir to give it to for protection. So she decided to give the shroud to the Savoy family in exchange for the shroud's protection and personal financial security. It has remained in the possession of the Savoys and came under control of the Holy See in 1985. Now this is where things get interesting. The year is 1898, and the shroud is now displayed in the Cathedral of St. John the Baptist in Turin, Italy. In honor of the 100th anniversary of the Savoy dynasty, the latest technology, a camera, was going to take a picture of the shroud. The first picture of the shroud was taken by Secondo Pia, an Italian lawyer. Now, Mr. Pia was in no way prepared for what he was about to experience. As the film was developing, the image of a crucified man began to clearly emerge. It was as though the negative was a positive, and that the shroud, as seen by the human eye, was the negative. Everyone was astounded at what they witnessed. Years later, the buzz continued and caught the attention of another photographer, Giuseppe Enri. He also took a photo of the shroud in 1931. Photographic technology had improved somewhat since 1898. The developing process produced the same results, however, even with greater detail. The Shroud of Turin fell under great scrutiny, and scientists became very interested in the shroud, not so much as a religious relic, but as a scientific artifact. The Shroud of Turin Research Project was founded in 1978. It had a team of 33 scientists from all over the world. However, things quickly went awry. In 1988, Michael Tite, a self-proclaimed atheist, and crew labeled it a medieval hoax. After a shoddy carbon dating test was done on the repaired scrap of fiber from the shroud. So it wasn't from the middle, it was from a little scrap on the end of the shroud about the size of a little pinky finger. But the piece of material itself was a patch. It wasn't part of the original linen. The shroud also was in a fire in 1532, and parts of it were repaired by the nuns who tended to it. This bad press lingered for years. I actually remember when all this carbon dating kerfuffle took place. My first reaction was, didn't they say it was in a fire in the Middle Ages? Won't that throw off carbon dating test? I didn't buy into this apparent definitive result, and thank goodness neither did many other scientists. The shroud was also examined by scientists at JPL, Los Alamos, Sandia Labs, and the Air Force Academy. None of them could explain how the image was produced on the shroud. It wasn't paint or a stain, and it superficially laid on top of the linen. Each lab concluded the image was not man-made. Two Air Force Academy physicists, Professor Eric Jumper and Professor John Jackson, used a VP8 image analyzer on the shroud. A VP8 analyzer is used by NASA to study the surfaces of planets so as to get an image of their topography. When applied to the face of the image on the shroud, the face became 3D. This imager didn't produce the same results on any other picture, just the shroud. The dating issue was resolved as time progressed and technology became more advanced. Pollen samples show that the shroud was in Jerusalem, and the way the linen has degraded over time, they can date it around 2,000 years. There were also coins over the eyes, another Jewish burial custom of the time. Turned out to be a coin that was only in circulation for a few years during the time of Jesus. 2 years ago, the Institute of Crystallography used wide-angle X-ray scattering to date the shroud. The date came in at a narrow margin of 2,000 years. Okay, so it was a crucified man, but was it Jesus? The brutal way this man was crucified and tortured is not typical of Roman crucifixion. The number of lashes he received, the crown of thorns, the severe beating, and the lance wound to the heart, all reported in the Gospels, are present. Each one of these horrendous acts is historically atypical, and having them present on one man is statistically impossible. Scientists were able to determine the blood type as well. It is AB. Now, AB is rare and mostly found in Middle Eastern men. It's interesting to note that this blood type is also found in documented Eucharistic miracles. Well, because of today's technology, there is now a preponderance of evidence that the Shroud of Turin is the burial cloth of Jesus. Another conclusion is that the image was most likely made by perfectly parallel particle beams of light consisting of 34,000 trillion watts of energy in a 40th of a billion of a second. Wow. There have been over 500,000 hours of scientific research so far spent on studying the Shroud of Turin. Also, 102 academic disciplines have submitted articles in peer-reviewed journals. The trend of calling the Shroud of Turin a medieval hoax is quickly approaching the dustbin of history, and it's science that's placing it there. Personally, I find it no surprise that it took today's technology to start decoding the shroud. And they're still finding more on how the image was transferred using laser technology. It's as if the shroud was left to us, knowing in the future, at the right time, when we have the right technology, humanity will need this discovery most. Or is the timing just a coincidence? As St. Thomas Aquinas once said, "For those who have faith, no explanation is necessary. For those without faith, no explanation is even possible." If you are interested in delving deeper into this subject, I suggest you read Body of Proof by Jeremiah Johnston. He documents much of the interesting scientific evidence in full detail. Well, that's it for this episode, and as usual, I will see you on the flip side.